When ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1974 with Waterloo, they would be known in all of Europe. So it was time to tour through all of Europe. Or was it? Well, they did anyway, and they cancelled all their scheduled Folkpark concerts for that. It wasn't a charming move in the eyes of Swedish Folkpark managers, and on top of that, this European tour would be shaped by contrasting reactions in many ways. Let's explore this fascinating chapter in ABBA's story, the first tour under their new name ABBA.
Times of joy and times of sorrow.
Hey! So, today we are going back in time again and we are actually looking at two concert tours. Europe in winter 1974 and 75 and ABBA's return to Swedish folkparks in the summer of 1975. We will be talking about the fascinating song selections, also in context with ABBA's following tours, about some magical memories from behind the scenes and how the reception would shape ABBA's future. Both tours really have the same concept and style and songs, and our main focus will be on ABBA's experience in Europe before we conclude our episode with a look at ABBA's final Folkpark experience. The European tour started on the 17th of November 1974, and for the next 2 weeks it would bring them through Denmark, Austria and no less than 7 concerts in Germany. The tour would then continue for 2 more weeks in January 1975 through Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, Denmark and Finland. There were actually plans to also do concerts in 9 other countries: the UK, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Turkey, Israel, Greece, Yugoslavia and Spain, but those ideas were abandoned and ABBA would never be doing live concerts in 5 of those countries. It was remarkable enough that they would do concerts outside of Scandinavia, and here's the simple reason: at that time ABBA had only released 1 more single after Waterloo, which was Honey Honey, but they did have 2 albums from which they could choose songs for their concerts, and they already recorded 2/3 of their upcoming 3rd album, which would be ready for release in April 1975. And with the start of the tour, they released their next single from that upcoming album, So Long, with the B-side I've Been Waiting For You. All of these songs were part of the concert, along with many more. However, once again, we actually don't have an official setlist for this European tour, but we do have a bootleg fan recording of one of the Folkpark concerts from the following summer. This bootleg recording is an amazing documentation from those early years and the only opportunity for us to hear many of ABBA's early songs as live versions. Some of these songs were not even performed on TV or anywhere else. There may have been some alterations and other songs on the European tour, but it is very likely that the setlist was more or less the same. So before we take a look into the sequence based on this bootleg recording, let's do it chronologically and go through ABBA's first 3 albums to see which songs they picked for the concerts. From Ring Ring, they chose the title track, which is not included in the bootleg recording, but which was advertised on posters and mentioned in reviews. They also performed He Is Your Brother and Rock and Roll Band. This was the last time they would choose any song from their first album for a concert tour, except for He Is Your Brother, which was retained for their 1977 tour through Europe and Australia, and which even made it as far as 1979, not for that year's concert tour, but when they performed the song as part of the Concert for UNICEF with other artists. From their second album Waterloo, they chose 7 songs, the first 4 tracks from the album, as well as Honey Honey, Watch Out and Gonna Sing You My Love Song. Only 2 of those would make it to 1977, and Waterloo was the only song from ABBA's first 2 albums to make it as far as their 1979 concert tour. And finally, if you had been in the audience in one of those concerts, you would not only have been treated with the A and B side of ABBA's most recent single, but 3 brand new songs which were never heard before at all. Hey Hey Helen, Rock Me and Intermezzo No. 1. All of these songs would be released on ABBA's upcoming self-titled 3rd album, and they would all be performed in 1977 as well, except for Hey Hey Helen. Curiously, the only 2 other songs ready by that time, already recorded in the studio, were SOS and Man in the Middle, but those would first be released in April 1975 on the album and as a single. SOS was then added for their Folkpark tour in the summer, along with their then latest single I Do, I Do, I Do, I Do, I Do. These two songs were also included in their 1977 concerts, but in 1979 and 1980, from ABBA's third album, only SOS made it into the setlist, along with the lesser-known tracks Rock Me and Intermezzo No. 1, which in my opinion both work so well in concert. If we take a look into the bootleg recording again, we get an idea of the sequence of all of those songs. The opening song was Hey Hey Helen, an amazing first track with a long drum introduction lasting for almost 1 minute. We do get an idea of how they visually performed this song when we take a look into the one and only TV performance of Hey Hey Helen from Don Kirshner's rock concert in America, where they even performed in their original tour costumes. For the concerts, judging from our bootleg recording, we also have Frida on lead vocals for Rock and Roll Band, which is an amazing live performance full of energy. Frida and the band give it their all, and in my very own opinion, they finally make this song work as good as possible. In 1972, they did something similar for their live performance of Santa Rosa at a festival in Japan, when they changed the lead vocals from Björn and Benny to Agneta and Björn. And for the performance of SOS on these Folkpark tours, at least on this very bootleg recording, Frida sings lead vocals on the second verse. And with this song selection, these concerts really reflect the variety of their first 3 albums and the variety of styles that ABBA was exploring during this period. First of all, these concerts have quite a glam rock vibe, a tone that is already set up with the opening song Hey Hey Helen and continues with songs like Rock Me, King Kong Song, Rock and Roll Band, Watch Out, and So Long. And to some degree, it's also reflected in ABBA's costumes. This orientation and style doesn't come out of nowhere. The UK charts at the time were full of glam rock artists, ranging from David Bowie with his Ziggy Stardust concerts from 1973 to Roxy Music. But with ABBA's concerts, it certainly wasn't all about glam rock, on the contrary. It's purely ABBA when we also have sweet pop music with songs like Honey Honey and I've Been Waiting for You, as well as schlager-type songs like Hasta Mañana, I Do, I Do, I Do, and wistful ballads like Gonna Sing You My Love Song. This variety and style was recognized in reviews from the time, and some of them noticed even back then that there was something special about ABBA. What ABBA delivers must be, in terms of German groups of the same kind, classified to be of some higher levels, while this group mixes rock, soul, and even homemade music together well. And this variety and style really seems to have its justification in the purest form. On a very recent comment, Marike Andresen had a wonderful observation that fits so well to this evolution in ABBA's story. What never ceases to amaze me is how the musical backgrounds of each individual member couldn't have been further away from each other. Think about it. Agneta came from Swedish schlager pop as a singer-songwriter, Frida was performing and recording jazz standards, Björn came from his own folk boy group the Hootenanny Singers, and Benny was in Sweden's answer to the Beatles with his band the Hepstars. When you put these 4 musical genres next to each other, I don't think anyone could have guessed back in the day that these 4, who were so successful in their own right in such vastly different styles, would mesh so beautifully to create one glorious, unique foursome called ABBA. A most wonderful observation, which only goes to show that it's all a natural progression. And to make it even more complete, there couldn't have been any other musicians to join ABBA on this tour than a band called the Beatmakers. And they were not only ABBA's backing band for this tour. For the one and only time in ABBA's concert history, they actually had an opening act. The Beatmakers was a 6-piece band of Swedish and Polish musicians, and their opening part was described as rock music with some jazz elements. On reviews at the time, they were sometimes named on par with ABBA, which seems a bit odd, but we should remember that ABBA really was a brand new group as well, especially for the international audience. Now, before we go deeper into those fascinating reviews for ABBA's European tour, let's take a look into a very special perspective. For that, we need to travel to early November 1974 into the auditorium of a school in Sollentuna outside of Stockholm, where some magical stories happened. Here, ABBA rented the auditorium to rehearse for 2 weeks for their tour of Europe. Just this setting alone gives us an idea of how grounded and approachable they were. One day, they were standing in the cafeteria line amongst the students of the school. ABBA was famous but not near the superstar status they would achieve later on. The Swedish media couldn't care less what they were doing, and they didn't need any security or fences. And there was one lucky boy whose father happened to be the principal of that school, so this boy got to witness ABBA's rehearsals every single day. Every day after school, I took the bus to my father's school. He would let me into the projector room in the back of the auditorium. There, in the dark, so I wouldn't get noticed, I sat for hours watching my idols rehearsing. Just imagine, folks, watching ABBA during live rehearsals every day after school for hours for 2 whole weeks. That must be the most unforgettable time of your life. The excitement alone every day in school, waiting for that school day to end, so you get to see ABBA again. Wow. This boy also must have been one of the very first people ever outside of ABBA and their band who got to hear brand new songs like Hey Hey Helen and I've Been Waiting for You. And one day, when he saw Agneta going into the restrooms outside of the auditorium, he waited for her to come out. When she came out, he asked her for an autograph, and she was very sweet and asked him if he would like to meet the others as well. So this lucky boy got to enter the auditorium rehearsal hall to talk to ABBA. Björn and Benny seemed a little annoyed, he says, since they were actually working, but he got all of their autographs. And speaking of upset ABBA members and arguments, this young fan also reports that there were many arguments during rehearsals, with Frida storming out after disagreeing with Benny, Agneta singing out of key and getting bad looks from Björn, and so forth. And all of this is the fascinating stuff that we usually don't get to see or hear from, and it only shows the hard work behind these shows and the music to make us happy in the end. And beside this lucky son of the school's principal, at the end of rehearsals, an entire group of students was lucky when ABBA gave a free concert. Our hero of this story was sneaked in through the stage door by his father and ended up in the first row, centimeters away from the performance. And after the concert, Benny and Agneta were still around, and again, the principal of the school knocked on the stage door, so his son got to talk to Agneta and Benny one last time. Agneta asked him which songs he liked best, and Benny gave him sheet music for the Waterloo album, which they used during the concert. We would think that this rehearsal concert gives us an idea of the general audience of ABBA's actual concerts. However, this time the crowd was much more mixed and higher in age. There were mothers, fathers and people between 25 and 30 years of age. ABBA performed in small to average concert venues, music halls or convention centers with varying capacities between 1,000 to 3,000 people. Only the concert in Gothenburg had a capacity for 7,000 people, and it was in fact completely sold out. But that was a big exception, because as the fairly new group that ABBA was, with just a handful of international singles, not one concert was sold out, and some were even cancelled, with official explanations ranging from technical problems to TV duties, when it really was due to low ticket sales. This pertains to every concert outside of Scandinavia. The concerts in Denmark, Norway, Sweden and Finland were mostly or always completely sold out. And this contrast in ticket sales is also reflected in the variety of reviews for these concerts. Very often, those reviews were quite cynical. First of all, the sound of these concerts must have been very loud, and it was one of the things that is very often mentioned and criticized in reviews, and that even led to complaints. Already during school rehearsals, the teachers were measuring the sound, and it was 114 decibel. It was so loud that the teachers reported them and made a complaint to the Health Administration Board. The concert in Gothenburg was measured by the health department, and it was 100 decibels. Approved levels were between 80 and 90 decibels. And just to have an idea, the sound of 120 decibels is described as unbearably loud, as the absolute threshold of pain, and as very dangerous. The table for maximum exposure time shows us how long it is safe for someone to be exposed to different noise levels. For 100 decibels, it is 15 minutes, but going further up to 115 decibels, it's merely 28 seconds. Oh, what would we give to be at one of those concerts? However, extreme noise levels are not really uncommon for rock and pop concerts and are also found in discotheques. But of course, for the cynical critics, this was just what they've been waiting for, and the loud sound often seems to be the main focus of those reviews. It was described as being the sole surprise of these concerts, and that after all, success wasn't just about loudness. The concerts were criticized for the bad and too loud setup of the amplifiers and the awkward acoustics. If they ever were mentioning the music, it was described as heartfelt, entertaining music, but also as unambitious, as music that fits best for harvest festivals, and that it was a bit too poor for a concert. It is difficult to tell whether whistles at such a concert express enthusiasm or displeasure. I'm not quite sure if these reviews are really accurate of what those concerts were like. In fact, the cynicism in those words is quite obvious, if not blatant. In actuality, ABBA's PA system was high-tech and expensive, and their lighting equipment was exclusively imported from West Germany, which all made it the most ambitious tour anyone from Sweden had ever attempted. And when we take a look at other reviews, something that is often praised is the perfection of those shows. It is described as a tempo-filled, super professional stage show. It was praised for the visual execution of songs and hits, for how everything was tightly calculated, including movements and dance choreography. In fact, Agneta and Frida rehearsed their choreography 2 hours every day for 2 months with choreographer Graham Tainton, which again gives us an idea of just how hard and professional they were working. And there was also praise for the solo spots that was given for each group member. In Denmark, the concert was described as a huge success for ABBA and that they were taking the audience by storm with an international class show. The shows were generally described as light-hearted, funny and colorful, as a cute bubble world, which is already reflected in the visual presentation. There were soap bubbles floating through the air, and ABBA's wardrobe was praised as fairy tale costumes, which then turned into sexy clothes when even Björn and Benny went topless in the second half of the concerts. It was described as pure fun, as a convincing concert in which the 2 female singers of the group were a class of their own. It's fascinating to see that with all the cynics, there were some people who already recognized what it all comes down to with ABBA. They described it as a concentrated, friendly and peaceful arts and crafts, and that saying anything bad is not possible. And here is one review that really nails what, for me, ABBA is all about. The show was really swinging, the stage was full of action, sex, professional entertainment that makes you happy and your heart beating. I really feel alive. This is what music should always be. It gives me energy. There was a very recent Spanish comment on one of my videos from Sofia Tejol, and again it fits so well with these thoughts. ABBA was a space of freedom for my imagination as a child. My country was under a dark dictatorship, and of the few things I could see on TV, these smiling people with colorful clothes, with sounds that I could immerse myself in, helped me a lot to trust in a better life. Fortunately, my parents bought me their records. From Chile with Love and Gratitude, a big hug. This is really beautiful. Thank you so much for this. And it really goes back to those 1975 concerts, this colorful, fun world of ABBA, and it makes me wish even more if only we had a documentation of this period. Well, we haven't, but we almost got one. And this brings us to the final chapter of this story, ABBA's return to Swedish folkparks in the summer of 1975. As I said in the beginning, these concerts seem to have been more or less identical to the European tour. In June and July, they did 14 concerts over the course of 2 weeks. This is very different to their Folkpark tour from 2 years before, where they had 80 concerts in 3 months. Now they needed time to focus even more on songwriting and studio recordings, as well as doing promotion on television around the world. And one of those TV programs almost could have been a documentary of this Folkpark tour. Swedish TV was actually proposed to tape the shows for a documentary, but they declined. We don't really know why, and there isn't too much information about this, but I can think of 2 reasons. First of all, the cultural climate in Sweden at the time in regards to ABBA was actually quite averse, if not even hostile. Swedish people were generally fond of ABBA, but there was a dominant musical movement in Sweden called prog, which means progressivism, the progress to improve civilization, and it was anti-commercial and political, the complete opposite of ABBA. And this movement really colored the perception of many institutions, and Swedish radio and TV was one of them. When ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1974 and brought the show to Sweden in the following year, it actually led to riots and protests, and in 1976 Sweden didn't even participate in Eurovision because of that. So why should they spend even more time, effort and money for a tour documentary on a group that was already commercial and successful on top of that? And secondly, I mentioned it in the beginning, when ABBA cancelled all of their scheduled Folkpark concerts through Sweden in 1974, again because of Eurovision and ABBA's strive to go international, I think that didn't make things any better. It is actually quite a wonder that we got wonderful Swedish programs like ABBA Dabba Doo in 1976 and the ABBA in Concert TV special, but a documentary of ABBA's Folkpark tours in 1975 was just completely out of any realm of possibilities. However, a few months after the tour, we actually got a documentary that showed ABBA in the studio recording Dancing Queen. This program was about their manager Stig Andersson, and it was full of cynicism. Well, even if we were never at any of these European and Folkpark concerts, I hope you got to feel a little of the atmosphere from those times. For me, this is so much fun, and if you were at any of these concerts, please let us know your experience in the comments below. As I said last time, it's really all that is left for us. But I will give you some hope at the end. If we take a look at who the sound engineers of this tour were, we can see that it was Michael B. Tretto and Glass of Geierstam. We know that Tretto recorded many of ABBA's studio sessions on very special tapes, and apparently Glass of Geierstam has many soundboard recordings of ABBA's later tours. So it would not surprise me if similar recordings of these Folkpark concerts are equally stored somewhere. It would be amazing. Around this time, across the globe and down under, ABBA's brand new music video for Mamma Mia was shown, and something happened that no one expected. The following year, ABBA had no choice but to visit Australia in person to appease hunger of the massive amount of new fans. And another year later, they returned to Australia for their very first world tour. And this time, we got a documentary alright, full of euphoria. See you next time for part 3, ABBA's concert tour through Europe and Australia in 1977. Alright, until then, hey do!